What's up, Packer fans? I'm Nariah Chapik, host of Pour Another Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. The Packers had a huge victory on Monday night over the Minnesota Vikings and are now set up heading into the final week of the season to face off against the Lions and have themselves at the very least a 2 seed. And there's just this marinating possibility of, yes, a number 1 seed hanging in there out there in the balance. So I'm here to break down a little bit of what we can look forward to, what we need to watch out for in this final week of the 2019 NFL season as we prepare for our inevitable playoff run, which is just around the corner. So without further ado, it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So as we get started, I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to Slippin' Sideways. You left a comment about 4 hours ago. It's a little after 9 o'clock on Friday night. I've had one hell of a crazy Christmas week. You have that when you have children. But I got your comment about 4 hours ago, a little sad face saying no video this week. So I did want to put something together and present it for you guys. This is going to be a little bit different format than what we're used to because I'm not going to go into my 3 keys to victory. I'll give you a game prediction, I suppose, that will just kind of come off the top of my head because I haven't prepared for one. Quite frankly, I see Green Bay heading into Detroit and being able to take care of business. They have a number of players that are on the injured reserve. They have no Matthew Stafford. This is a banged up Detroit team. It's a dome environment where the Packers have performed well in the past. I think that they go in there, they take care of business, and they, like I said, they're going to come away with at least a number 2 seed. But before we dive too much into the playoff implications, so like I said, special shout out to you, Slippin' Sideways. This is your shout out of the week. Because of you, I poured myself a drink and decided to talk some Packers, to do some Packers content out there on the interwebs. And actually, before I even get ahead of myself even more, you probably noticed this lovely new staple feature that I won in one of those adult games for Christmas. I actually had to steal it from the roll of the dice, and I was able to kind of take this off of my sister-in-law's hands and add it to my set. I have myself a new pint glass thanks to my wife. I have myself a new Packer shirt. I'm all Christmased out as far as just the holiday season. I'm glad it's over. I regress though. I'm getting a little bit off topic, but I just want to point out some of the newer things that are added to the set. And as of course, I got to get rid of this canvas in the background. So 1,000 subscribers. I'll tell you this. If I make it through the entire season and I have not hit 1,000 subscribers, I will still give this thing away because I want to get a new set. I want to get something going on in the background as we head into season 2 just around the corner. It's only a year away. Again, getting ahead of myself. So go ahead, click that like button, hit subscribe. I had about 15 to 17 new subscribers over the last week since that Viking video, and let's kind of remember what came of that Viking game. So a lot of talk. I mean, the Packers were an underdog of all underdogs coming into that game. And one thing that has irritated me more than anything else the last couple days, because I go out onto YouTube, I go to ESPN and all the Bleacher Report. I listen to the media, I listen to the critics. Nobody was liking Green Bay heading into the playoffs before Monday night. They said that, they of the remaining 11-3 teams out there, 11-4 teams out there, that Green Bay was the least one that you should be worried about. Now, after they upset the Vikings, I picked the Packers, and the more we headed into that game, the more I was liking Green Bay's chances. But after that Viking game, now it seems like people are starting to jump on a bandwagon, and that just irritates the hell out of me because we've seen, up to this point, we've seen the possibility of what occurred on Monday night against the Vikings. And I mean, yes, Dalvin Cook didn't play. I think if Cook plays, it's a little bit different offense that we see out of the Minnesota Vikings on Monday night. But Kirk Cousins, he had 122 total passing yards. He was 16 for 31, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He finished with a quarterback rating of 16.9. They held their run game with Mike Boone to 11 carries, 28 yards. His longest run was 7 yards. And then for the most part, outside of Stephon Diggs' touchdown early on in the game over Jair Alexander, that was the only real big play out of their offense that entire game. And Green Bay showed up on defense. Za'Darius Smith had 13 and a half, he had 3.5 sacks in the game. He had 7 tackles. 3 of them were for a loss. Just looking at what we've seen throughout this year, and we've known that the talent is there. We know that the belief is there. We know that the brotherhood is there. I think those are big components that we have to really give a lot of attention to when we talk about teams that can make deep playoff runs, teams that can make Super Bowl runs. The pieces are there. The belief is in the coaching staff. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be the guy. I'll get to that in a second, but I'm loving that. Was a game that when they came away with that victory, it really kind of pointed the needle in the right direction. It was something that we needed to see ever since that San Francisco game where they really just didn't show up whatsoever. It left a bad taste in my mouth. And that victory over Minnesota was absolutely huge. It was big. It secured the North. And here we go. With 1 week to go, we can kind of figure out where the final seedings will play out and whatnot. But again, defense has come into its own really over the last couple of weeks. You look at week 13, they held the Giants to 13 points. They held the Redskins to 15 points, the Bears to 13 points, the Vikings to 10 points. The defense is coming along. They're figuring it out. Kenny Clark has had a bigger role the last couple of games. Rashawn Gary has had a bigger role the last couple of games. My X factor heading into that Viking game was Kevin King, and he did not find himself burnt really throughout any portion of that game. And his interception in the third quarter was absolutely huge. The Packers, and we're talking about turnovers, the Packers, of course, lost the turnover battle 3-0 heading into halftime. They were down 10-9 with 3 turnovers in the first half. At that point, I felt like we would be able to figure this out and come away with a victory. You knew it was just a matter of time until Cousins threw that interception. Eventually happened. So kudos to that Packers defense. Let's move to the offensive side of the ball. Now, the time of possession was really solid for Green Bay. Let me look that up here real quick. So Green Bay had a time of possession of 37 minutes versus Minnesota's 22 minutes. And if you think about just the overall capacity of what that does to the Minnesota Vikings defense, it starts to wear them down throughout the game. And that was definitely evident in the second half because you started to see Aaron Jones start to break a couple runs. He had his 2 rushing touchdowns in the second half. And the offense, although it wasn't lighting the world on fire, it was getting the job done. The running game, like I said, figured itself out. And Rodgers has been taking a lot of flack. He didn't have the greatest game once again, but you look at a guy like Allen Lazard, it seemed like on third down that Allen Lazard was becoming that safety blanket for him. Adams did drop a touchdown right at the end of the first half. That would have been a huge, we could have went into halftime with a lead with that turnover battle. But I'm still of that mindset that when Rodgers gets it going, and I'm not concerned, it's gonna happen. There's a lot of comparisons about a LeBron James sort of thing, and I'm not a big LeBron James fan, quite frankly, but he turns it on in the playoffs, and at this point, if they take care of business on Sunday against the Detroit Lions, really all we need to get from Rodgers is 3 solid performances where he's accurate. It looks like these games could potentially be at home, if not, at least 1, but if not 2 games at home before heading to the Super Bowl. Rodgers has the capabilities, he has the talent, he has the arm strength. I ranted about that in my last video. He is still capable of being the guy, and that gives me a whole lot of hope of what this team can become and how dangerous they can be as the playoffs come around the corner. Like I said, if Rodgers can just play 10%, 15% better than what he has been playing throughout the course of the season, that will be enough for them to propel themselves to the Super Bowl. I do think he will have to have a much better game in the Super Bowl when you face opponents like Baltimore or the Kansas City Chiefs. But the team looked great. They absolutely look great. I want to circle back around to Za'Darius Smith real quick because this guy, what a difference maker. 100% difference maker. I didn't hear Preston Smith's name a whole lot throughout the game. Now, he did have an impact, and just because you're not sacking the quarterback a whole lot doesn't mean that you're not making an impact on that game. But when we look at Za'Darius Smith, he has 13.5 sacks on the season, and there have been 3 players in NFL history. We're in our 100th season of the NFL. There have been 3 players who have recorded 13 sacks, 35 quarterback hits, and 17 tackles for a loss. Those 3 players, you've heard of them: J.J. Watt, Aaron Donald, and yes, now Zadarius Smith. So he is finding himself in some elite company. This is a guy that was not on the NFL's top 100 list the last couple, well, ever. I don't think he's ever been on the list. I know for a fact he wasn't on last year's list or the year before that. That's all going to change. This guy has come out of his shell. He was kind of pushed to the side as far as a potential Pro Bowl option or nomination. He did not make it in the Pro Bowl. I think this guy has just have a motor, and he is hungry, and he got his shirt and he got his hat. And while we're talking about shirts and hat, you can't ignore the fact that this team is focused on the bigger picture. Their shirts say the North is not enough. I wish I could track one of those damn things down because I would love to have one, but I think I would actually love to have a Super Bowl shirt much more than just an NFC championship shirt. Really, when we think about Viking fans have gotten excited about these NFC championship shirts. I know the Bears were excited about having them last year. As Packer fans, we've been afforded the luxury to win numerous NFC championships throughout the last decade or two, and that has just kind of come to be a given. It's nice that we're finally back there after missing it for 2 years. I love the mindset that this team is not satisfied with just the North. They know where they have to go, and I'm loving everything I'm hearing out of this team. I'm very confident with this Detroit game. I'm very confident with what we're going to have heading into the playoffs, and with a first round bye, that could be very huge. So where are we at, right? So a lot of the talk, the media is now swung back in the favor of the Green Bay Packers. They love the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers doesn't need to be that guy. And in fact, Monday was the first time Rodgers has ever won a game in his career where he threw an interception and did not throw a touchdown, came away with a victory. And it's the third game this season that he has not thrown a touchdown, and they ended up winning all 3 of those games. So coming into the season, the Packers actually had a record of 4-10 if Rodgers had not thrown a touchdown in the game. So the fact that they have gone 3-0 this year just tells you something, and it all boils back down to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is going to be that huge recipe for success as the weather turns cold, and the running game is going to be an option. And one thing that I'm thinking about, I'll talk about Aaron Jones' stats for the season so far in just a second, but defenses still know that they need to fear Aaron Rodgers. You listen to the interview from Mike Zimmer. All Mike Zimmer could really talk about heading into last week's game was that Aaron Rodgers gives him nightmares, and he's a tough opponent to game plan for and have to figure out how to defend and whatnot. So the defenses are still mindful that Rodgers can easily go out there and burn you and destroy you and tear you apart and whatsoever. And this has been beneficial for Aaron Jones. Now, on the flip side of it, the thing that we have to think about, Aaron Jones, he has 984 yards rushing this season, 16 touchdowns. He's averaging 14.7 yards a carry. That is a little bit shy of his 5 yards per carry that he was averaging last season under Mike McCarthy's offense, but he's had a lot more touches, and he has taken advantage of those, and the touchdowns are just on a whole nother level from the previous year. He also added another 431 receiving yards. He has 3 additional touchdowns. He has 9.2 yards reception. He was not even implemented whatsoever in the passing game last week against Minnesota. So that brings him to a grand total of over 1,400 total yards, 19 total touchdowns. The guy has an opportunity to score 20 total touchdowns with another one notched to his belt on Sunday against Detroit. And once defenses maybe start to think, okay, this is a guy that we might need to put a little bit more attention on. I mean, he went off for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Vikings. If they start to focus on that run game, that's going to open up passing opportunities. You still have Adams. You still have Lazard. You're going to find some other guys to step up. I'm glad to see that Geronimo Allison was able to come away with that 2-point conversion, at least get a catch in the end zone and have some sort of feeling of success to get some motivation and some confidence back. But this offense will figure itself out. I think when the defenses start to focus more on the run, Rodgers will find his way. And if we need Rodgers to be Rodgers and throw miracle passes or crazy performances and whatnot, I'm not concerned about that happening. This team is something that we have not seen in a while. And it seems like a complete 180, but this was the game. This was the game that I had circled ever since we lost to San Francisco about a month ago, that if they could go into US Bank Stadium, a stadium they had never won before, and face off against a Vikings team, a playoff team with a winning record, which, by the way, the Packers are 8-1 against teams heading into a game with a winning record. If they could come away with that game, that would be the boost that they needed to head in to the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. You have to get hot at the right time. which it seems like they have started to develop. You have to win the division and get some home games. They've got that, so they've checked the 2 biggest boxes. Now they just need to clean up some of the smaller stuff and get ready for what's around the corner. So what is around the corner? Well, essentially, it feels like we're beating a dead horse, but if you are not aware of how these playoff seedings are shaping up to be, with a win on Sunday, Green Bay finds himself locked into the number 2 seed no matter what else happens in the NFL. So you can predict or we will know by Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, 3:30, whatever it might be, where Green Bay stands its chances and if we have to really watch a whole lot of games. After that, if Green Bay does come away with a win, and when Green Bay comes away with a win, well, then at that point, we all need to go ahead and put on our Seattle Seahawks hats, because if Seattle manages to defeat the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday Night Football, which is a primetime game that we will all be watching, then the Packers would end up with the number 1 seed. They'd have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They would still have that first round bye, of course, and teams would have to come to Green Bay for sure once, for sure twice if they continue to win, and then you can kind of walk yourself down to Miami. Green Bay is going to be a huge advantage for the Packers to be our place to play when they're looking at teams like the Saints possibly come to town, even if the Vikings come to town, even when you're looking at Seattle, San Francisco. These teams have had flaws. These teams have struggled on the road. Every single one of these teams that I've listed off has struggled on the road, and Green Bay is not a tough place to win. The wins have not always been there in this last decade, but with that crowd, with the re-energize that LaFleur has brought to that by shutting off the lights, shooting off fireworks. I was at Lambeau back in September. The crowd and the atmosphere feels different. That is going to be a tough place to win. So yes, I did not go out and buy myself a Seattle Seahawks hat. I borrowed it from my nephew because there is just 1 week that I will be cheering for the Seattle Seahawks, and it will come to be Sunday Night Football. I have no idea what I look like in this stupid hat. I didn't even try it on before I decided to start filming this video. So there's your playoff implications. I loved what I saw from the Packers this past week. I love where the needle is pointing as we head into the playoffs. Go ahead and cheer for the Seattle Seahawks. That will get us that number 1 overall seed. We will finish the season, folks, at very worst 12-4, at very best 13-3, and nobody, even myself, I said maybe we were 11-5, maybe we'd be a 12-4 team. I did not see us being able to be a 13-3 team. There were a lot of challenging games, and quite frankly, outside of that Niners game, the other 2 games we should have won. But we don't need to get into that. It's the NFL. Shit happens. Let's all move on. So when we talk about the Lions, again, they're banged up, they're injured. I have the Packers winning this one fairly easy. I think it's a final score of 30-14. I think that the offense will, again, continue to improve and kind of game plan and work out what they need to. They're coming off of a short week. Really, they only had 2 practices heading into Detroit with the travel that goes on and is associated with that. So there we have it. A little bit of a disjointed video. I did want to put something out there. This one's for you, Slipping Sideways. If you guys, I mean, it goes to show that your guys' support is what motivates me. It's what gets me to kind of throw something together, put some content out there. And next week, what I anticipate with us hopefully having ourselves a first round bye, I want to do a little bit more in-depth look at the season, where our roster stacks up. We won't know who we're playing quite yet. So that's what I want to do for next Friday's video. But if you guys want to tune in and chat and comment, have a conversation, I will go live on Monday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you guys haven't already clicked subscribe, hit that like, hit that notification bell. I usually send out the notification about a half hour before I go on. And then we will talk about not only the Detroit game, we can talk about the Viking game, we can talk about things heading into the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of conversation to be had on Monday night. So as always, thank you guys for tuning in and checking out the video. And until next time, I will see you on the internet. Damn, I did not drink my beer a whole lot. Go Pack, go.